If you don't listen to me, we're getting a divorce. I'd rather divorce a husband who says such selfish things. I accept the divorce my husband demands. He looks at me with a smug smile, unaware of what comes next. My name is Emily. I'm 35 years old and have been married for 5 years. I live alone with my husband, and though I long for children, we haven't been blessed yet. We considered fertility treatments, but my husband decided against it, preferring to leave it to nature. He reassured me that even without children, we could still have a fulfilling life together. After our wedding, my husband's parents passed away one after the other, leaving us no time to focus on treatments. Truth be told, my husband is quite dominant. He was my senior at work, and this hierarchy carried into our marriage. In front of relatives, he'd call me his foolish wife and scold me harshly for any mistakes. This might make him sound like a bad person, but he has his gentle side too. When I was his subordinate, he offered precise advice and guidance when I faltered and appreciated my hard work. More importantly, he supported me when my beloved grandfather passed away, lifting me out of my grief. This encouragement led to our dating and eventual marriage. After getting married, I retired and became a full-time housewife. Hey, Emily, I'm home. Welcome home. My husband usually returns home after 9 p.m. As a manager, he has a lot of work and often stays late. You're late again today. You must be tired. I pick up the shirt and socks my husband has discarded and speak to him. He just sits on the sofa, silent as always. He must be exhausted. I start preparing dinner for him, and when I finish serving, he eats without a word. After about 10 minutes, he heads to the bathroom. I prepare a bath towel and underwear for him and start cleaning up after dinner. When he finishes his bath, he goes straight to the bedroom. My husband has always been a man of few words, but since his recent promotion, he seems even more fatigued. For the past year or so, our conversations have dwindled to almost nothing. Despite this, I trust and love him because he was there for me during my hardest times. I lost my father in middle school and my mother in my freshman year of high school. After that, my grandfather took me in and raised me as his own daughter. He was warm, kind, and adored me, and I cherished him deeply. When I started working, I wanted to give back to him, so I saved money, took him on trips, and shared delicious meals with him. Those times were joyful, and I wished for his health and happiness to last forever. However, 3 years into my job, my grandfather passed away from lung cancer. I was left completely alone. I knew I would eventually lose my grandfather, but I didn't expect it to happen so soon. I wished I could have done more for him and spent more time together. I was devastated and cried every night. My then boss, now my husband, was the one who noticed my change and supported me through that difficult time. My husband genuinely listened to me and said, "You've been through a lot. You did well." I felt incredibly fortunate to have him as my boss at that time. Despite his usual stern, intimidating demeanor, he was gentle with his words, showing me his true kindness. I believe he is a kind man at heart, and that's why I want to continue serving him. On one such day off in the afternoon, the home phone rang. "Hello." "Oh, Emily, it's me." It was my husband's younger brother on the line. "Oh, long time no see. What's up?" "I need to speak to my brother. Is he around?" "Sure, hold on a second." I called out to my husband, who was lounging in the living room. "You have a phone call." As expected, there was no response. My husband took the phone without a word. "Hello." "Hey, how are you? What's up?" His face, which had been serious just moments ago, instantly brightened into a smile when he heard his brother's voice. My brother-in-law, 15 years younger than my husband, is clearly favored by him. I hear he's living a happy life with his beautiful wife, whom he married 2 years ago. I'm curious about what's going on. "Ah, is that so? Are you okay?" The tone of my husband's voice shifted to a serious one, and I could sense something was wrong. "Well, if you're ever in trouble, just let me know. I'm your big brother, after all." With that, my husband ended the call. "What happened? Is something wrong?" "My brother seems to have been laid off." "Laid off?" I was taken aback. I never anticipated something like this. "Yeah, I heard the company was struggling, but I didn't think it would lead to him losing his job." My husband slumped into a chair, looking dejected. I couldn't hide my own shock. My brother-in-law is the complete opposite of my husband, gentle, calm, and humble. He has always treated me with respect and defended me when my husband was harsh, even apologizing on my behalf. His wife is similarly kind, and together, they've made a strong impression on me. Now, facing this setback, I find myself wanting to support them in any way I can. I'm determined to help them, even if it's just a little. Hey, isn't there something I can do? I asked my husband. He shot me a sharp look. What do you mean by something? Well, I was thinking, can't we do something to help your brother feel a little better? My husband sighed heavily in response. You really are hopeless. You who haven't been out in society wouldn't understand. He's going through a tough time right now. To casually suggest we do something, outsiders should keep their opinions to themselves. His aggressive response took me by surprise. I had meant well, but it seemed I had upset him. Outsider, are I part of the family too? I asked, almost pleading. Family, you're my wife, not my brother's. You're just an unrelated outsider. His words felt like a stab to the heart. I had never seen my husband so harsh before. I understood that his brother's layoff was a significant shock, but there are ways to communicate that don't involve such cutting remarks. Just don't do anything unnecessary, he said before walking out the door. After that, his behavior towards me became even more oppressive. What's with this meal? You should learn from my brother's wife. What did you do all day? My brother's wife always keeps herself tidy and manages everything perfectly, he barked at me. I had never seen him so unreasonable. I wondered what had changed. Enough. What on earth is going on with you? I finally snapped. Shut up. Everything's a mess because of you, he retorted, making no sense. I didn't know how to handle his outbursts. Soon, we stopped making eye contact altogether, and the distance between us grew wider. I began to question our relationship. One day, my husband started a thorough cleaning in the morning, sorting through things and separating what was necessary from what was not. He steadily filled garbage bags with discarded items. I wondered what he was up to, but given the recent coldness between us, I didn't have the energy to confront him, so I kept my distance. Unexpectedly, he spoke to me. Hey, what are you doing? You should start packing too. Huh? Packing for what? We're moving out. I'm giving this house to my brother and his wife. What? What are you talking about? I was shocked to learn that he intended to give our house to my unemployed and struggling brother-in-law and his wife. Wait a minute, why are you doing this all of a sudden? Shut up, don't question me, my husband snapped, but I wasn't going to back down. You said you wanted to do something for your brother, didn't you? That's a completely different issue. What are we supposed to do if we hand over the house? Where will we live? We'll figure that out later. My brother's in trouble right now, and as his elder brother, I need to help him. My husband was driving the conversation entirely on his own. My brother-in-law wasn't the type to demand that we move out so brazenly. I looked at my husband suspiciously as he handed me something. If all you're going to do is talk back, you're of no use to me anymore. We're getting a divorce? Get out of here right now. He threw the divorce papers at me, already filled out. I was stunned by his sudden proposal. I stood there in disbelief, but somehow it felt like the right move. Perhaps this was a chance to move on, even if staying together seemed impossible. I picked up the divorce papers from the floor and signed them silently. My husband watched with a triumphant smile, so exaggerated that I almost laughed. After finishing, I turned to him. This house isn't yours, is it? Ha! This house was mine before we got married. It belonged to my grandfather, and the land was his too. Both were passed down to me, remember? My husband's expression shifted to one of shock. If it's in my name, how are you going to give it away? Ha! How are you going to? I pressed him with questions. My husband suddenly looked flustered. Did you forget? You moved into my house before we got married because you thought it was a waste to pay rent. I've been paying the property taxes on the house and land every year since then, and you haven't contributed a penny. Well, it doesn't matter anymore. Once these papers are filed, our divorce will be finalized and we'll be strangers. Wait a minute, let's calm down. Calm down? That's my line. You're handing out divorce papers like it's nothing. How selfish can you be? It's unbelievable. I vented all my pent-up frustrations. I had loved my husband, and I thought he loved me too, but perhaps that was just my misunderstanding. I never imagined our marriage would end so abruptly. Emily, wait, this is a misunderstanding. Let's talk. Talk about what? You're the one who initiated the divorce. I'm done with this. I carefully set aside the filled-out divorce papers. It's a holiday today, so I'll submit them first thing tomorrow morning. My husband lay on the floor in a daze. No, this can't be, he muttered. Without sympathy, I said, this is my house. Please leave immediately. Once the papers are filed, we'll be strangers. I can't live under the same roof with a stranger. He grumbled as he left, but I didn't waver. After all, he was a stranger now. There was no reason to show mercy. Even when he cried and clung to me, I felt nothing. Eventually, he left the house, resigned to his fate. News of my divorce spread quickly through my ex-husband's company. He was immediately looked down upon, and the details of our split, along with his behavior throughout our marriage, circulated widely. It seemed he had lost his standing at work entirely. I wondered who had started and propagated these rumors, as all I did was answer questions from his colleagues and subordinates. About 6 months after the divorce, while returning from the real estate agency, I encountered someone I would rather not see, my ex-husband. It was unsettling to see him lying in wait for me outside the agency. Despite my attempts to ignore him, he persistently followed me until I reluctantly agreed to hear him out. Enough. If you have something to say, just say it quickly. Emily, I've always despised you, he declared. What? His sudden admission left me bewildered. It turned out he had been blaming me for his brother's layoff. Ha! Why would that be my fault? Ever since we got married, nothing but bad things have happened, he insisted. It's true that unfortunate events like the deaths of his parents and his injury occurred after our marriage, but his father was already hospitalized before we married, and his mother had always been frail. His injury was caused by his own drunken clumsiness. He tripped over a curb and broke his wrist. Yet in his mind, I was somehow responsible for all his misfortunes. So you think I was the cause of all the misfortune and that's why you hated me? I always thought you were just a bit awkward, but it turns out you despised me all along. I was exasperated. His refusal to take responsibility and his tendency to blame others were infuriating. It was astonishing that someone like him had managed to become a supervisor. I started to worry about his subordinates, fearing they might be unfairly criticized under his leadership. How had this reliable superior turned into such a person? I couldn't help but feel a bit pitying for having been married to him. But even after divorcing you, bad things have kept happening to me. What kind of bad things? I asked, as he rolled up his sleeves to reveal painful-looking burns. Actually, my apartment burned down 3 months ago, and that's not all. I lost my wallet, made mistakes at work, and my brother's been distant and hasn't been in touch recently. So, even after our split, his misfortunes continued. I wasn't surprised. To be honest, hearing his stories didn't stir any sympathy in me. After all, these were consequences of his own actions, and I had nothing to do with them. Please, Emily, come back to me. I can't do this without you. We've been a couple for so long. Didn't I take care of things when you were still working? And didn't I help you so much when your grandfather passed away? The way he tried to guilt-trip me made my skin crawl. All your misfortunes are the result of your own actions. Maybe you should take a good look at yourself and address your habit of blaming others for everything, I said firmly, turning to walk away. Emily, wait up. Emily, my ex-husband called after me, trying to catch my attention. I pretended not to hear him and disappeared into the crowd. A week after the divorce, I received a call from my former brother-in-law. Emily, well, you're not my sister-in-law anymore, are you? I'm sorry to bother you, but it's about my brother. He explained that the decision to give up the house was solely my ex-husband's choice. He and his wife had no prior knowledge of it. My brother has always been prideful, and it's worried me. His behavior towards you, Emily, was terrible. My wife and I felt so sorry watching it all. It was clear he had a genuinely kind heart. I couldn't help but marvel at how different two brothers could be. I don't know if it's appropriate to say this, but I think it was good that you divorced. I want you to be happy, Emily. Thank you. I'm glad to hear that, I replied. He shared that he had found a job relatively quickly and was managing to make ends meet. I was genuinely happy for him. I'm thinking about distancing myself from my brother, he continued. It was clear that he had his own reasons for this decision. His intention to gradually cut off contact with his brother explained why my ex-husband had been unable to reach him. Strangely enough, my ex-husband, who had isolated himself from both his wife and beloved younger brother, was now truly alone. I hoped he would eventually come to understand the consequences of his actions. But for now, I needed to remove myself from his life entirely. On the day I met my ex-husband again, I had just finalized a contract with a real estate agent to rent out the house I inherited from my grandfather. The house was too large for me alone, but I couldn't bring myself to part with it. It was filled with memories of my grandfather. I'd rather have someone who appreciates it live there. I'll be changing my cell phone number and moving to a new place, completely severing all ties with my ex-husband. I'm 35 years old and have a long life ahead of me.